Welcome back, everybody, to Creating Communities for Neurodivergent People. Today, we're going to talk about an option in housing, and it's going to be a unique option to a lot of people. Let's start out with the problem. Where will my child live when I'm gone? Here's the solution. Set your child up now to live as independently as possible while you're here. A solution to this concern is provided by our guest today, Charles Durrett, internationally renowned architect and prolific author of 16 books on co-housing communities. Charles' most recent book, One Life, Live It, and Charles, One Book, Love It, from me. There's your book review. It'll go on Amazon momentarily, is a book about co-housing, but focusing on the neurodivergent community. We may be joined by my nephew, John, who is the co-host of this show, living on his own for the first time at age 40, but I'm kind of thinking he's experiencing technical difficulties. So if he pops in, I would love it, and, we'll fold him into the discussion. But for right now, Charles, let's just start at the beginning. What is co-housing? What do these communities look like, and how can they be beneficial to the neurodivergent community?
That's a perfect start off question. Number one, co-housing is a neighborhood that is created by the future residents. It's a custom-made to be high-functioning neighborhood. It started in Denmark, and when I asked a woman who lived in co-housing in Denmark why, she said that her and her husband had grown up in a high-functioning neighborhood, and that nowadays it's a crapshoot whether your neighborhood is high functioning or not. So even in Denmark, so she decided with her husband to start a custom neighborhood with a bunch of other families, and now she feels very assured that her children are living in a neighborhood that's more functioning than the one that she grew up in, because it was in fact designed to be high functioning from the outset. And basically, nobody else can come close to creating that like the future neighbors can. People bring real values, real experiences, real understanding of life together. You amalgamate that understanding and you have really got something. That's why, neighborhoods that we've built have gotten national, not only national attention, it's been in the New York Times 8 times, our work, but the different housing associations have named them neighborhood of the year, because you don't see anything like it. If you walk into a co-housing community, you see that the knowing, the caring, and the support for each other is just obvious and natural. It's just a thing, a natural extension of two things. One, that they created it together. So the community is actually built at the most important level, at the emotional and the social level, before they move in. And then number two, the architecture is designed very much to maintain the community long after the honeymoon has worn off, where the proximity and the common facilities is all designed to make everybody's life more naturally convenient, more naturally practical and economical, and healthy and safe and interesting and fun. It's just designed to be those things. So you can actually create that stage set for everybody to live out their life in that setting. So number one, participation is a huge part of co-housing. Number two, extensive common facilities. Three, design that facilitates community, which means, among other things, to be child-friendly, adult-friendly, senior-friendly, the cars are elsewhere. The cars are off-site, basically. Where I live, 34 houses, we moved in with 21 seniors and 37 children, and a bunch of parents. People walk 700 feet to their auto or stroll and bring their groceries back in a cart, because they don't want to compromise what they have together. There's nothing like the sound and the smell and the physical threat of an automobile to change the nature of a neighborhood. So, and to make it much more diluted than it ever otherwise be. People at some level appreciate each other, but now That's why these neighborhoods have to be built by the residents themselves. And it looks like a place where my life is set up to be, among other things, a lot more economical. For example, 34 houses, we have one lawnmower, and it would be ridiculous if you bought a second lawnmower. We only need one lawnmower because we share it, and we have one swimming pool and one hot tub, and we share probably 1,000 things, whether it's wheelbarrows and rakes, and then we make dinner for each other. We have common dinner in the common house 5 nights a week. So it means once or twice or 3 times or 5 times I could go up to the common house and somebody else made dinner. I might have to sign up a couple days in advance, and then once a month I have to make a dinner. I have to make dinner for everybody, and that's the way it works. And you'll get a sense of that from the book One Life, Live It. That there's a lot of cooperation. It's basically a neighborhood designed to be cooperative. It's not a cooperative, which is a financial model, but it is really people cooperating to make their own lives better. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Ayn Rand was unfortunately correct. Nobody does anything for anybody else other than themselves. But the reality of co-housing, it makes my life a lot more economical. I save a couple $1,000s a month in bills because we share a great heating system, and we share, we have shared cars if you want. We just share so much. Internet in Nevada City, this is just one of 100 examples. Internet where I live is $95 a month per household, but we share it with 34 houses. We get a commercial rate of $235, which means that we pay $9 a month instead of $95 a month.
Okay, so I have two quick questions about what you just said. The first question is the residents who are going to live in the co-housing community are the ones that literally built it conceptually, by design. You call it architectural programming, I notice in the book. And that's very interesting to me because the typical communities that we move into are built by contractors.
And bankers and business people and bureaucrats.
Right.
They
And you
all the
individually
say,
put them on sale.
yeah, they have all the say, and developers. And I'm building communities with people who say, I want it to be easy for me to go next door and borrow a cup of sugar. And that's not only because the house is proximate, but I know the person. And so
Yes.
all of that stage set comes from, a deliberate process.
Absolutely, which is fascinating to me. And by the way, I go on Reddit, I go on Google, I try and research a lot what moms are going through. And I'm hearing the word village. I'm seeing the word village come up more and more now. Organically, people are coming to this realization, Charles, that we need a different model of living, of community. And the word community is being used, and one word that you use throughout your book, village, I'm seeing that too. So you have preceded and created energy towards this movement.
Yeah. I mean, I coined the word co-housing, so I'm highly motivated to see high functioning neighborhoods get built. And interestingly enough, our co-housing was in the local 4th of July parade. And when our float went through the parade, the MC says, and here comes co-housing, an experiment in living. And I went up to the MC afterwards and I says, you know what, Pat? You guys are the experiment. You guys who live in big, alienating, wasteful, estranged,
Mm,
atomized single family houses, you're the experiment. You've only been around a couple 100 years. Villages far outdate that. So the Danes would say they're actually not doing anything new. They're just creating what used to happen naturally. And
yes.
and what I like about what they're creating is it's a conscious effort. It's not only consciously saying we're moving back to a village, but it's consciously engineering that village deliberately to really make sure that it serves my life. It's not a village in theory. It's not a village in some idealistic approach. I need this thing to serve me, and it does if you engineer it just right.
Or, and let me make a comment from very affluent communities, because I'm in Los Angeles and there are many affluent communities. You buy your home based on ego. You buy your home based on status, the biggest homes. Well, but you don't party with these people. You don't borrow a cup of sugar from anybody,
Yeah.
so you're very
Um,
isolated.
Yep.
And you said this in your book, you could be in a not co-housing community and be very isolated.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to paint a picture in people's heads, Charles, and see if I got this right. So cars are destructive sometimes. They can ruin the sound of a neighborhood. How many times has it been quiet? I'm reading in the house, and all of a sudden, somebody's car, music blasting, motor blasting, comes driving down the street, and it really kind of ruins your vibe. But since we're going to start focusing on neurodivergent people now, one of the things is safety. So tell me if I got this right in my head. So a community can be designed, programmed so that you have an outer circle and an inner circle. And the outer circle are where the cars would be, the garages would be, access to the public would be. A lot of neurodivergent people don't drive cars. But inside the circle is where the community exists. You walk outside of your door, you can take a walk around the street, you can visit the neighbors. And so you're safe because strangers aren't going to be meandering. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got it pretty correct. I mean, it may be a circle, it may not be, but in any case, the cars are elsewhere. And we had an 85-year-old woman in our co-housing, and she moved right. She was right next to the parking, so she was closer because her kids thought that was critical, that you should be next to the car, mom.
Mm.
And as soon as the kids went away, she moved 700 feet from her car. And one day I asked her, I said, Meg, why did you move 700 feet away from the car? And she says, because my relationship with my neighbors are much more important than my relationship with the car.
Wow.
And, they can live out there and they'll be fine. And we can live in here and we'll be happy. Where I live, I never hear anything. Zero. And people always about noise. Oh, I care about noise. I don't want to hear noise. But then they live, intertwined with automobiles, basically. So either they're not accurate in their desires, or they don't know how to deliberately create the kind of place that they say they prefer. So
Bingo.
that's why co-housing comes along.
Bingo on that. I think the latter is probably truer. Okay, let's focus in now on neurodivergent people. First of all, why is a co-housing community beneficial to neurodivergent people?
So many reasons. And thank you for asking that. I was listening to an NPR station, a radio program about a month ago, and there was a high school kid, and neurodivergency is really difficult on teenagers. I mean, there's a very like very serious suicide rate, and emotionally, it's very very tough. And this teenager was saying, throughout my entire elementary school years, I never went to recess one time. He had autism. And it's because I couldn't stand being around people who had no idea what I was going through emotionally, physiologically, psychologically. And so I would just stay in the classroom, read, talk to the teacher, etc. But I wouldn't go outside to be with others who didn't know where I was coming from. So the number one reason is knowing where others knowing where you're coming from to the level that they can actually give you support, and you can support them, because when you support them, you're giving yourself support too. So it's really important that people. And here's the other reason. I've been to about 385 co-housing, and I love them. I live in one. That's great. But I'd never seen anything like Solhammer before. When I walked on site, I saw people giving so much to each other that I just said, I have to write a book about this. I've never seen anything like this, where the capacity for co-care and the capacity for growing relationships among people who didn't have relationships before. There's a guy on the cover of my book who moved into Solhammer when he was 34 years old. never had a job, 34, never had a job, had only 1 hour of peer interaction a week. Now, and like everybody told me when he moved in, he was very shy. He looked at his shoes all the time. He was very reserved and etc. I met him a couple of years after he moved in. He was always smiling. He was always saying hello, etc., etc. And I asked him one day, I said, Arner, why are you so happy all the time? And he says, well, here I have purpose. I'm accepted. I'm engaged. I belong. I appreciate everybody, and everybody appreciates me.
Yeah.
That's key.
Yes.
That's real. That's as real as it gets. You get in there in the emotional trenches, and that is as real as it gets in terms of swimming in love, frankly, versus swimming in a foreign world.
Right, which is why it's so important that we address that huge fear that all parents have about their kids in general, but certainly the neurodivergent kids is and is keeping them close to the vest, keeping them in the house because that's the most protective thing they can do. But they don't realize how much their children need other people and people they can relate to.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you're going to get that if you have a supportive family, you'll get that from the family,
Yeah.
but we don't grow unless new people are introduced into our lives. Isn't that true?
Well, you get it from the family, but I hate to say it, it's almost a little condescending. How are we doing this morning? It's nothing like being accepted by peers. There's nothing like it. And having friends who are peers.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about living in houses, it gets to be a habit in your own house. My sister, her best friend, son has autism. He's 30. He never leaves the house, and he almost never leaves his room. And frankly, when his mother is home, and he goes out of his room and he notices that his mother's home, he goes back into his room. That's how it has become so difficult for him to relate to people. I don't think it's natural, frankly. We're a social being, and I think we can set up a world where your neighbor is your best ally, not your worst enemy.
Right. Exactly. Which is why choosing the neighborhood that you live in, the design of the neighborhood, having people that are like-minded is so very important. And even if we weren't having this discussion about neurodivergent people, the neurotypical world is talking about creating different communities to suit them because we have a world of unrest right now, of great unrest worldwide. And certainly we're seeing this in our country, and people are starting to want to gravitate towards like-minded people for a kinder and gentler way of living.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. Okay, so next question. What's the qualification for a neurodivergent person? Can anybody, what's the level of care? Is the level of care the determination for the appropriateness of a co-housing community?
Well, the answer is yes. In Iceland, they have it's a spectrum. So when it comes to autism, they have 18 levels it's odd that our country, we have 3 levels: high functioning, mid functioning, low functioning. Now they call it, high need of support, medium need of support, low level of support. And theirs is pretty much that mid range move into co-housing. If you're high functioning, basically you could live in independent care. And this is from the standpoint of sociologists who make a point out of getting as many people into this one neurodivergent co-housing community in the world, and 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 low functioning need more support than the community can provide. In co-housing, you're really looking to your neighbors to make the big difference. So, for example, I had a fall a couple years ago, and I took a big chunk of flesh out of my leg, and the neighbors changed the bandages, for example. They did a lot of things that I would normally have to get my butt to a hospital to get done, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that's a big move. I get that. But somebody else making me chicken soup when I'm home with a cold is a small move that moves my emotional world and everybody else's emotional world considerably. The 3-year-old kid across the aisle here, across the lane here, who comes by visiting, all of that just adds up to, a healthy existence, and for me personally, a lot of that came because I grew up in a small town of 325 people. So I knew what a functioning place felt like. And so when I saw, Solheimer and other co-housing communities, I became very attracted to neighborhoods where people know each other, care about each other, and support each other.
So I just want to be clear with people. Solheimer, which is what Charles has been referring to, wasn't it the very first co-housing community in Iceland? I think it was 1930, something
Yeah.
like that.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
specifically for people with autism and Down syndrome, correct?
Well, it started out that Cecilia Sigmund Deuter is the woman's name who started it. She mostly started out as an orphanage at very first. The first 5 residents were orphans. But then, in Iceland in those days, especially in the 30s, orphans were very stigmatized if they had mental illnesses. So it all became mental illnesses.
Mm.
And now it's mid-range autism and Down syndrome.
Okay, now, about a week ago, I was pre-interviewing somebody, a mother, who has a very severely autistic daughter, I think with Down syndrome as well. She is married, and they have money. So this is a family of means. Her daughter cannot be left alone for a second. So they are able to provide caregivers for the daytime, and then the parents take over in the evening. But they're now working with a lawyer for a conservatorship and a trust. They're trying to set their daughter up now with the financial means to have somebody care for her when they're gone, but she's also looking for a housing community. The word institution, no, that's not even a word in her. So can't we have a co-housing community that can take in either the most extreme cases because the people have financial means and caregivers can live with them? What do you think about
Absolutely,
that?
absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, Solheimer, for example, has 45 neurodivergent people and 45 neurotypical people too that live there. And half a dozen of those are social workers, and lots of them are their families. And other people who are in, a couple people administrate all the money there, et cetera, and their families. There's a few people that just they are volunteers. There's like 10 volunteers that live there from around the world because they Solheimer is such an amazing scene there that they attract volunteers from all over the world. So they attract this guy, for example, Peter, from and my view about neurodivergent communities is just do it so well that you're going to attract a lot of interest in your project, a lot of volunteers. That's all you really need. And Peter, for example, from Poland, he is a phenomenal pedagogue and capable of teaching everybody to do farming. So of those 45 neurodivergent, 20 or so work on their common greenhouses. But he makes sure that, this plants are taken care of this time of the year and these plants are taken care of that time of the year. And he sets them up for success. He sets all these neurodivergent people up for success to the extent that everybody feels like they have a lot of purpose in life. It's a place that you move to if you want to have a job. And it's not just a job so that you have money. They do have some spending money, and they just built themselves a swimming pool from the money that they make. And that's significant because I don't know if you know, but autistic people have a 166 time chance of drowning per capita than neurotypical. 166 times because they don't know how to react when they fall into water. So it's a long process to help them realize and know that this is what you do when you fall into water. It's a gradual process, but you can teach people. And the point is, you don't have to have a death sentence just because you don't know what to do if you
Hmm.
fall into water. I just came back from Malta, and that's an island nation in the middle of the Mediterranean. They're surrounded by water, and the autistic community is just at the they have to police these kids, all adults, all the time. Stay away from the ocean. The ocean is everywhere. You see it everywhere you go. So,
Yes.
there's got to be a way. And I just love the fact that they see a problem, they solve the problem. We've been living with this statistic for a long time now. We've known about this statistic for a long time now. You fall into a swimming pool, you're dead if you have autism. Well, let's get rid of that reality. We can get rid of that reality and all other dumb realities. And the worst reality is how many of them are lonely? How many of them feel very not accepted by
Hmm.
society? How many of them feel like they can't engage with others in a healthful way? And that reality is very changeable, and a healthy reality is very, very doable.
Absolutely. Now, I want to just go back a few minutes. You said something that really was going to be my gateway into the discussion of employment. So, two things. I do remember in the book you said several times you do not want to mirror your community based on somebody else's. Your community must be unique to the needs of the people who want to create the community. So I thought that was very important. But you can still take pieces and ideas
Of course.
upon which to build so that you can come to your own unique formula. Employment. So in some co-housing communities, there's opportunity for employment. There may be stores, there may be services, correct? And maybe in others, there isn't employment within the community itself. You must go out of the community. How does
Yeah.
that work?
The vast majority, especially neurotypical, the vast majority of them have no employment on site. Some of them do. And if they do have employment on site, it usually has to do with farming and farmers markets and maybe some value added on the farming, in other words, making jelly out of the grapes and what have you.
Hmm.
Um, and people set up all kinds of businesses in their co-housing, massage therapy, and they write from home, and they do podcasts from home and all the rest. Solheimer is unique in that it doesn't strive for full employment, but if you want to feel purposeful in your life, you will find it there. They make sure that that's true. And they give preference to people who want purpose in their life. They want to feel like they can actually have a livelihood. They can have some disposable income. Of course, sometimes it has to be managed. And but most important, they want to feel like a relevant member of society.
Yes.
And that's just a deep a disposition by some folks that I'm not satisfied unless I'm contributing to the bigger whole.
Yes.
And those folks feel that way, and they get rewarded for that. It just happens to be just like the rest of society, but this
Yeah.
happens to be one of the unique opportunities for them to be rewarded for engagement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I saw this with my nephew, John, when he moved into Section 8 housing. It's a cute little building and a cute little community, and you can walk everywhere. He cannot drive. Well, he's a sociable person. So he talks to people in the building, and now there's one woman who pays him to walk with her to the grocery store to carry, I think she has a walker or a wheelchair, but he goes with her. He, helps her buy things and he takes them back and she pays him. He also loves doing laundry. So he started to do that for people. There's a facility in the building. And he got a 1 day a week job across the street at a popcorn store. So he's starting to piece his life together. But he's very lucky because he's an extremely sociable person. But to your point of staying in the room, I never understood why he would leave the dinner table at a family. um, holiday gathering and go to his room as soon as he ate. And so eventually I asked my sister why, and she said, it's too much noise, it's overstimulation for him, and the conversations don't include him enough.
Of
And,
course. You look
so
at the
yeah.
photos in the book. What I like, what drug me into that project was the images that I saw in person. When I saw three people, well, they have common lunch every day. And when I saw people, for the 45 for everybody, and when I saw people getting to lunch early to be with each other, having lunch together, staying for lunch afterwards for an hour sometimes. When I saw people doing that, and I try to analyze why, and their conversations are different than our conversations. They're not incessant chatter. The conversation at a table of six, there's probably about 50% as many words. People say something and then they're quiet, and then maybe there's more quiet, and then maybe somebody will say something else, and we'll add to that and answer that question. But it's not the same kind of frenzy that you and I feel like we have to have at the table, otherwise there's something wrong. What something is right at their table is a calmness, and they know, and that's part of their culture. And the 45 divergent people, neurotypical people know too. When I was there, I learned to be quiet. I learned to just be, and listen and appreciate the beauty that was in front of me, as opposed to constantly feeling like I had to say something for everybody to feel like I know something too, and I know something. And did you hear about this? And did you hear about that? And can you believe that? And can you believe that's happening? And oh my God, I didn't feel like that all the time.
Interesting. Very interesting. I'm going to really pay attention to that when I'm with John and anybody else, that calmness and allowing space, silence, in the form of space. Okay, so employment is very important if you can be employed. And Megan Bondi, who that's how I learned your name for the first time. I interviewed Megan already on this show. Work the way you're wired. That was the topic of her interview. And she turned a light on in my head because she supports people opening their neurodivergent people opening their own businesses. And I said, really, this is so interesting because people can provide services. If we dig deep within ourselves, what do we like to do on a daily basis? Just that we never thought would be qualified with an amount of money. That's what you can do for people. You can provide. So my nephew loves to do laundry. It calms him down. It's a task that's a linear task, one thing after another. And he'll do anybody's laundry. Who thought of doing this as a business? So I said, well, why don't you go to senior housing? Because there is transportation available for him, and there's a lot of senior housing in his area. And I said you could do laundry because at a certain point, people's bodies can't lift the load of laundry. And a lot of people who have money do not have extended families. So they'll be living in these nice apartment building homes that are called senior housing, but nobody visits them. So the community is within that building if you can make it a community. But to get somebody from the outside to bring fresh air into your life, so to speak, that's priceless. And so there are employment opportunities. So I just wanted to finish with, do you agree? Can you see that there are employment
Oh
opportunities
yeah,
people
oh
can
yeah. But what I
create?
loved about Solheimer, and I loved about this community, is they figured out, yes, some people work in isolation. I get that, by themselves, and they figure out, especially the people that they had a little pharmaceutical area that does a lot of Montessori like activities where you're separating things. And the pharmaceutical companies really love hiring autistic people to do that because they can really focus on one line item like that.
Hmm.
But most of the jobs really did much better as teamwork, and most of the individuals did better at doing teamwork.
Okay.
So, for example, the guy that I was talking about who hadn't had a job before and didn't really know how to communicate with people, now he has 30 hours of peer interaction and 30 hours of work a week. And in his work, he has worked with a team of four. So when I said, why are you so happy, Arner? He says, I have purpose, I have tools, I have compatriots, I have a team. I have a team. So he's on maintenance, and his job is just scraping the wood off of wood windows. Somebody else comes behind him and sands the wood with an electric sander. Somebody else comes behind him and primes the windows with primer. And somebody comes behind him and paints the windows. Somebody who's very, lack of a better word, OCD, and knows how to just get it just right and scrape off the excess primer, etc. So the point is that he's set up for success because when necessary, and this is happening throughout that place, things are bifurcated very carefully. You're only going to do and be asked to succeed in what you can succeed at. At no time are you going to get overwhelmed with things you can't. So like even your nephew, he's going to have to get familiar with the business side and the marketing side, the accounting side. And that could be challenging for him. So having people on his team who also are neurodivergent, who can do that piece is and will communicate with him, and he relates to, and he has a social life. They go and play pool after work, and they make lemonade together, because they become best friends, etc., etc. These best friends are key, and absolutely key to their happiness and their emotional well-being is that they have 44 friends that live there. And maybe not all of them are best friends, but if they have 4 or 5 best friends, they have a life of consequence.
Yes.
That they can go over to after work and cry or whatever they have to do. I got to tell you, the scenes I saw there, especially in the senior housing, where they have a nursing home for the 9 of the eldest, and they would just sit on the couch together and lean into each other sometimes for an hour, like 2 Irish setters that would be lying on the couch and just lying on top of each other just because they wanted to be together. And some of the people that they worked for, maybe they were a scraper once upon a time, so the people that they worked with would come visit them too. They were very enmeshed in a community. They weren't isolated. They weren't part of our very atomized society. So I would worry about your nephew when he retires, for example. Is he going to have his peers still with him and around him and caring about him? I don't know that these other folks will be with him and around him and caring about him in the same way.
No, you're absolutely right. So this is a first step out of the house. And
Mhm.
so it's not bad. It's fairly safe, but there's got to be another step. So I had said to you when we were doing our pre-interview, getting to know one another, I was explaining there's this place called Brookwood Community outside of Houston, Texas. Completely neurodivergent, 465 acres, 11 homes, actual homes, and they have a mix of neurodivergent categories or people within. It's not just all Down syndrome, all autistic, because they want them to integrate and learn how to function in a balanced life with people that have different needs and issues. And what they do is they're there for life. So that's it. They're there for life. That's the commitment. They have medical facilities there, but they also have what you just explained like 10 or 15 minutes ago about I think it was Solheim where you were describing where they have plants and gardening and people get involved doing that.
That's right.
So what Brookwood does is they look at these maybe idiosyncratic behaviors that people have and they make jobs out of them. So what you do is natural and you have purpose. It's everything that you said. So you're right. And we he watched the video for Brookwood. And we might go down there and visit. But well, the way I want to end this is with you because I think mean, I love Brookwood. I love the intention. I love the spirit. I love the commitment to you are with us as a family till you die. And I love that security. But there's other options. And so with you, Charles, if people watching this have kids, whatever age they are, that maybe have more severe issues but they are able to have caregivers with them, but they want them in a community. Can you, as the architect, as the architectural programmer, I have learned from your book, um, can you take interest from people and then look to start a community based on this interest that you're getting from
Oh,
people?
100%. You only make a community for people who are interested in this stuff, whatever this is.
Okay.
Sometimes it's neurodiverse, sometimes, I always have people who want to live lighter on the planet, people who grew up in functional neighborhoods want to move to a functional neighborhood, people who grew up in dysfunctional neighborhoods and now they want to live in a functional neighborhood. So and that's just the beginning of it, those big picture items. Some people want to play badminton together and some people want a swimming pool. I mean, it's macro and micro.
Okay. And I also want you to define the term architectural programmer. So you made a point of this in the book. You're an architect, so you physically design the environment, the community, the housing.
Mm-hmm.
But the architecture has a programming to it. You look at the needs of the community, and your design for the overall community addresses the needs of the community, right?
Yeah, the same two questions come up at the beginning of every design criteria. Programming is architectural jargon for design criteria. What is our design criteria? Well, I always start with two questions. Who are we as a culture? And who do we want to become as a culture? Those are two fundamental. I'm writing a book now about taking cohousing to the world because I've been working all over the world. And some of these cultures are quite diverse. You really have to be willing to roll up your sleeves and be the anthropologist. Well, luckily, I have worked with 8 anthropologists over my career who are constantly helping me figure out how to discern best who a culture is. And it's very objective. You can go to Philadelphia and ask a bunch of households or ask a family, would you rather go to the football game on Sunday or go visit the in-laws? You can quite readily understand a culture if you take that time to start from the beginning and figure out who it is. So you figure out who the culture is, then you figure out who the culture wants to be, and then you organize the material so that you can, by virtue of the goals, everybody comes to the table with real values, real goals, and real experiences, and then you take the goals, then you only work on verbs. What are the activities that serve those goals? Like, for example, if health is a big issue, maybe we'll have an exercise room. If the health is a big issue, maybe we'll plan walks off-site so it doesn't need an exercise room, But there's if maybe we'll plan a swimming pool. If child rearing, like where I live, moved in with 37 kids, child rearing and being great parents was absolutely the issue of the day. It was the paramount goal. I want to be as best as I can as a parent. Do you know what the shortest poem in the English language is, Judy? Me, we. And if you read that, the interpretations of that poem, it always comes down to the same thing. I can never be my fullest self unless we reach our potential as a culture. Mm-hmm. And they embrace that. And that is especially true for autistic kids. That adult will never reach their potential unless the people around them resonate with them and they can all reach their potential together.
Okay, and so this was the last point then with this. So whereas Brookwood Community, Lamb's Farm is another one outside of Chicago, strictly for neurodivergent people, your model is a mixed model. It is neurodivergent people and neurotypical people because John would be a great example. He's out in the world. He talks to everybody and he's very sensitive to neurodivergent people. So he balances out. And I think to your point, a nice mix would be great. People you can relate to specifically and people who give you a broader look at life because they are not you. They're a little different. They're but their challenges are different than your challenges. And so I think that's what your co-housing model allows for. And I think lastly, as a piece to this, it was a question I had written down. In your opinion, since you've done your life's work with this, studied this, do you think it's more important for the neurodivergent person to live on their own in the co-housing community, or is it just as good for the family of a neurodivergent person to move into the community?
Yeah.
You know what
What I really believe in that regard is, for example, at Solheimer, some people have their own apartment. Most people live in shared houses of 4 or 5 people, and they have a volunteer who will be there and help them organize breakfast and help them organize dinner, et cetera, and organize housekeeping and such. Some of them have family on site. And when that works, that's great. Basically, again, it's who we are and who we want to be. Some of these kids may want to be independent, they just don't know how.
Mm.
So setting them up for success is where it's at. They might live independently for a while and realize they're never going to learn how and go back to a group house, but all in the setting of people that they know and love them and they know love them. And you want to be somewhat well, you want to be very responsive. Responsive is the bottom line, because especially in my view, when it comes to just neurodivergent, on the one hand, you don't want to operate on prejudices. I don't think they can do this. On the other hand, you want to see what they can do and help them realize that goal if they can. But then you want to help them realize that maybe I was happier in a shared house. And I don't have to feel like I have to live out my earlier goal of living independently. Now I can go back, and now that I know these people better, or now I want to live in a different shared house,
Mhm.
I want to find the resonance. I
Yeah.
want to wake up happy. I want to wake up looking forward to getting out of bed. These are basic goals. And I can't wait to see Joseph or whoever. I'm going to go visit him we're going to go for a walk in the cool morning before we go to work, et cetera, et cetera. That's a life worth living right there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I want to see them realize.
Okay, so to end this, which has been wonderful, and I'm just so happy I met you. I'm so happy I read a couple of your books, but One Life Live It is just the amazing book for any parent of a neurodivergent person or neurodivergent person reading. I want to work with you. I want to work with you to gather people, organize people that have a range of challenges, neurodivergent kids with a range of challenges, just not those in the middle, but those that are more severe that really want the same thing. I want to know my kid is going to do well when I'm not here. And so I'd like to use this show to continually do a shout out to people who are looking for a solution, and I want to funnel them to you, and I want to be part of a solution, if I may.
Yeah, in fact, I want to elaborate. Solheimer happens to take mid-range autism and Downs, but I could imagine a community with. I have actually designed a school for everybody who had cerebral palsy before, and there's so many things that is yet to be done. They figured out at Solheimer what they could do with mid-range autism and Downs, but there's 200 DSM categories.
God, yeah.
There's so many things that yet to be figured out, and yet it always starts with the same thing: who are we, and where do we want to go? So it's very doable. You just have to be willing to do the study.
Okay, well, I'm in it because I think this is so incredibly important. And I thank you so much for all the work that you've done. I'm very lucky to have met you. I mean that seriously. And I want to move forward in doing greater work.
Well, I want to help you. So
Okay,
thank
great.
you for recruiting me. I appreciate it. I'll be there.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so in the show notes, you'll have the way you can reach Charles. And I know this has been inspiring to people. Please send this episode out to anybody you know. Get them to look at the show because we're doing great things here and we're building. I mean, I'm so happy the way we're building now. And so this is a great start to this year. Charles, thank you so much for your time, for your interest, and for your ideas.
Judy, thanks so much for having me. It was great fun. Thank you.
And thank all of you for joining us yet again. And I will end this episode like I end everyone, and that is in the world of special needs people, we all need each other. Talk to you next week.